Greetings Keyforgers and welcome to the third KeyForge Celebration video. We are back to a Winds of Exchange deck after the Unchained deck last time. This one is Saurian, Brobnar and Unfathomable. We have a Saurian token creature and it is the Protector who boosts Jaunts. Bottom card coming out because that is the deck list. I've made sure the token creature's on top here so we can have a look. This is Senator, 2 power, actions, keys cost +1 amber during your opponent's next turn. Very nice token creature there. We're actually going to be starting off with Brobnar. We're starting out with Strato Smack, it's an action. It's got an enhanced damage pip, play, deal 3 damage to a creature. If this damage destroys that creature, make a token creature. Always nice to start with token generation. Rowdy Scold, 4 power, has a capture enhancement and it put an amber and 2 damage enhancements in the deck. Rant and Rive is an action. You get an amber when you play it. Play. If your opponent has 8 amber or more, they lose half their amber, rounding down the loss. Press Gang is an action. Play. Make a token creature. If an enemy creature was destroyed this turn, archive Press Gang. Pound is an action. You get an amber when you play it. Play. Deal 2 damage to a creature with 1 damage splash. Jar Svend, 7 power with a capture enhancement. After a creature is destroyed fighting Jar Svend, make a token creature. Jar Svend must survive the fight. A second Jar, this one without any enhancements. Bumpsy, 5 power. Play, your opponent loses 1 amber. Brick Nasty, 5 power. After another friendly Brobnar creature fights, gain 1 amber. Berserker Slam is an action. You get an amber when you play it. Play, deal 4 damage to a flank creature. If this damage destroys that creature, its controller loses 1 amber. Overrun is an action. You get an amber when you play it. Play. If 3 or more enemy creatures have been destroyed this turn, your opponent loses 2 amber. Signal Fire is an artifact. You get an amber when you play it. Omni ability. Destroy Signal Fire. For the remainder of the turn, friendly Brobnar creatures may fight. Now moving on to Saurian. We're starting out with Symposium. It's an action. Play, exalt, ready and use a friendly creature. If it is a token creature, you may exalt, ready and use another friendly creature. Recruit is an action. It's got an enhanced amber pip. Play, make a token creature. If you exalted a friendly creature this turn, archive Recruit. Longosaur Lector, 6 power. Play, and after Reap, you may exalt Longosaur Lector. If you do, make a token creature. Epic Poem is an action. Play, exalt a friendly creature. Gain 1 amber for each amber on that creature. This card is nuts for a common card. Absolutely insane. Crushing Charge is an action. Play, destroy each creature with power 4 or lower. Gain 1 chain. Chancellor Dexterous, 3 power. After Reap, you may exalt Chancellor Dexterous's right neighbour. If you do, that creature belongs to House Saurian for the remainder of the turn instead of its other houses. Arm the Plebeians is an action. You get an amber when you play it. Play, make a token creature, ward it. Regrettable Meteor is an action. You get an amber when you play it and it's got a draw enhancement. Play, destroy each dinosaur creature and each creature with power 6 or higher. Orator Hizaro, 3 power deploy. Play, ready and exalt each of Orator Hizaro's neighbours. For the remainder of the turn, they belong to House Saurian. Hastatus Raptor, 5 power, 1 armor. Before fight, you may exalt Hastatus Raptor. If you do, deal 1 damage to the creature Hastatus Raptor fights for each amber on friendly Hastatus Raptors. Now they do come in multiples, and we have 1 more. Good of the Many is an action. It's got a damage enhancement. Play, destroy each creature that does not share a trait with another creature in its controller's battle line. And finally we are on to Unfathomable. Let's see how they get on without the Tide card. We're starting out with Flounder Right, 3 power. Destroyed, destroy the creature on your opponent's right flank. Toxicuda Venom is an upgrade. You get an amber when you play it. This creature gains poison. Kelp Minder, 5 power with a draw enhancement, and it enhanced a capture and 2 draw enhancements in the deck. A second Kelp Miner. Initiation is an action. It's got a draw enhancement. Play, make a token creature. If you have fewer than 4 cards in your hand, archive Initiation. Covetous Hema, 3 power with a draw enhancement. While Covetous Hema is not on a flank, it gains elusive. Play, capture 3 amber. A second Covetous Hema. And a third Covetous Hema. Adult Swim is an action. You get an amber when you play it. Play, put each creature with power 3 or lower on top of its owner's deck in a random order. Bubbles, 5 power. Play, put an enemy creature on top of its owner's deck. Soul Left, 3 power, destroyed. Destroy the creature on your opponent's left flank. Corp, not too sure how you pronounce this one, but 2 power. Your opponent cannot play more than 1 card of each type. That's action, artifact, creature, and upgrade each turn. There we have it. Let's get straight into the breakdown. I've decided to keep the token creature analysis in because it is such a big mechanic of Winds of Exchange. So we have the Senator here, 2 power, action, keys cost +1 amber during your opponent's next turn. Very nice action on there. There's no restrictions. It can reap, it can fight, unlike the shell we saw in the last deck. And it has 2 power, so it's not susceptible to damage enhancement pings or low-level board wipes like Dark Minion, if there is something like that in this set. If we look solely at token generation, there are 8 cards in this deck that deal with it. And we've seen in previous decks, there's usually a card where it makes a token creature, and if you meet a certain requirement, you get to archive that card. Now, we actually hit that card in every single house in this deck. We had in Unfathomable Initiation. It did get tagged with one of those draw enhancements. Play, make a token creature. If you have fewer than 4 cards in your hand, archive Initiation. So actually, the draw enhancement, even though it's a great enhancement, doesn't really help. It's more of a hindrance on this card, which means that you will have to have 3 or less cards in your hand when you play Initiation, because you will be drawing from that enhancement. It says fewer than 4, so 4 does not cut it. You need 3, 2, 1 or none if Initiation is your last card. Press Gang in Brobnar, make a token creature. If an enemy creature was destroyed this turn, archive Press Gang. And then in Saurion's we had Recruit. This one got tagged with an amber enhancement. Play, make a token creature. If you exalted a friendly creature this turn, archive Recruit. So we have that archive token generation in each house. Unfathomable, probably the least likely to be pulled off. That was the only token generation as well in Unfathomable. In Saurion's we had Arm the Plebeians. The action with an amber, play, make a token creature, and then you ward it. So it'll be a warded Senator. Longosaurus Lecter, 6 power, so quite a big hefty body in Saurion's there. Play, and then after reap, you may exalt it. If you do, make a token creature. So using that ability, either the play or the after reap effect, will activate what's needed to archive Recruit if you do have it in your hand. In Brobnar, we had Stratosmack. I love it. Huge hand, sending an enemy creature into orbit. It got a damage enhancement. When you play it, deal 3 damage to a creature. If it destroys that creature, you make a token creature. And then we had 2 Jarl Svend. I believe I am pronouncing that right. One of them got hit with a capture enhancement, and it's a 7 power Brobnar creature, so very, very beefy creature. After an enemy creature is destroyed fighting it, you make a token creature, but Jarl must survive that fight. The art on it is really cool. It looks like he's absolutely smashing a little Mars creature in the head. I believe that's with a big hammer. I don't know, but really cool artwork. So token generation in this deck, very, very good. Let's get to the main breakdown. If we look at Printed Amber, there was 10 in this deck, one of which was enhanced. We also had 2 capture, 2 damage, and 4 draw enhancements. There were 19 creatures, 15 actions, 1 artifact, and 1 upgrade. If we start with Amber Control, we obviously have our Senator. 2 power, action, keys cost +1 during your opponent's next turn. And we've just looked, we do have the ability to generate quite a few token creatures. So there is a possibility when we play this deck. In Unfathomable, we had 3 Covetous Hema. 3 power, and when you play it, you capture 3 amber. And if it is not on a flank, it gains elusive. So you're basically looking at the Aquan version of Old Bruno, if you don't have it on a flank, that is. These are very, very annoying for your opponent to play against. I couldn't find any control in Saurion's apart from our token creature, but in Brobnar we had the overrun. If 3 or more enemy creatures have been destroyed this turn, your opponent loses 2 amber. We are going to be fighting quite a lot in Brobnar because there are quite a few benefits to us doing that. We had Berserker Slam, always a great card. 4 damage to a flank creature. If it destroys that creature, its controller loses 1 amber. If you are playing another Winds of Exchange deck, the likelihood is they're probably going to have token creatures, and when they come into play, they follow the same rules, and they usually end up on a flank. As long as it's not those shells that we saw in the Unchained deck, this should be a very, very good card and a nice bit of amber control there. Bumpsy. As soon as you play it, your opponent loses 1. No way of bouncing it back to our hand, unfortunately, but I'm sure there are plenty of ways with other cards in the set. And then we had Rant and Rive. Play if your opponent has 8 amber or more, they lose half the amber, rounding down the loss. Now, it is scaling amber control to a point. If your opponent has 12 amber, you will round it to 6, so they're still on check unless you can increase that key cost. But it is a pretty good and effective card at just halving your opponent's amber total. Now, we don't really have any steel in there, so there is nothing that we can put with expected amber, but what we do have is the Brick Nasty. 5 power. After another friendly Brobnar creature fights, gain 1 amber. It's not a reap ability, it's not an after fight ability, it's not an action or an omni ability, it's a passive ability on this creature. If another friendly Brobnar creature fights, gain 1. It's not just going to kick off on your Brobnar turn. If you can fight with a Brobnar creature on an Unfathomable or Saurion turn, you're still going to gain the amber. Absolutely amazing card. In Saurions, we had the Orator. It's got deploy, so you can put it anywhere in your battle line, and then you exalt each of its neighbours, and they belong to House Saurion for the remainder of the turn. So you are able to use them on that Saurion turn, but it doesn't say that they lose their other houses, so again, a very nice way to activate Brick Nasty out of house on a Saurion turn. Chancellor Dexterous, 3 power. After Reap, you can exalt its right neighbour. If you do, that creature belongs to House Saurion for the remainder of the turn. Now, this does specify instead of its other houses. So it would lose Brobnar, so you couldn't activate the Brick Nasty. But again, out of turn house cheat, which could generate you amber through multiple different ways, the simplest of which would be reaping. Now, there is quite a bit of exalt in this deck. We probably don't mind exalting some of our creatures because we have that capture and that key control to be able to keep our opponent from forging a key. But we had Epic Poem. It's an action. When you play it, you exalt a friendly creature, and then you gain 1 for each amber on that creature. So you will always be gaining 1 because it exalts the creature before the second part of the effect happens. This could be a huge amber gain. Absolutely huge. If Crassosaurus is in this deck, this is going to be absolutely nuts. And then finally, we had Symposium. Exalt, ready, and use a friendly creature. If it is a token creature, you may exalt, ready, and use another friendly creature. So it could be an out-of-house activation if your token creature was not Saurion. Ours is, but if we do exalt that, we get to exalt, ready, and use another friendly creature. So Unfathomable or Brobnar if we wanted to. Again, Brick Nasty's on the field, Brobnar creature, run it in, gain an amber. Now, you may have noticed that the artwork on Symposium looks very similar, if not exactly the same, as Hedonistic Intent. This was a misprint, so I have a deck with a misprint in it. They are going to fix it when Winds of Exchange comes out, so it should have a different artwork. There was no artifact control in this deck, but what it lacked in artifact control, it made up for in creature control. In Unfathomable, we have Corp or Calp. I'm going to call it Corp because I think that's great. 2 power. Your opponent cannot play more than 1 of each card type. Action, artifact, creature, or upgrade. So the maximum they can play if they don't take this out is 4 cards if they have 1 of each type in their hand. It doesn't prevent them from using cards that are already in play. But again, very restrictive and will control how your opponent can dominate the board or not dominate the board. We had So Left. I'm going to pronounce it as So Left because it deals with the left flank of your opponent's battle line. 3 power, when it's destroyed, it destroys that creature. And I believe it will always come with Flounder Right. 3 power destroyed. Destroy the creature on your opponent's right flank. Now this is a special, so I do believe that if you get So Left, you're always going to get So Right. Bubbles we've seen before, 5 power. Put an enemy creature on top of its owner's deck. Now there are other cards that allow us to put creatures on top of both ours and our opponent's deck. Playing this first means you could bury a creature right at the bottom before you put the other creatures on top. And you could do that with the card Adult Swim. It's an action with an amber. When you play it, you put each creature with power 3 or lower on top of its owner's deck in a random order. So you'd pick up your creatures that were power 3 or lower, shuffle them, let your opponent cut them or let your opponent shuffle them, and then put them on top of your deck. So again, used in conjunction with Bubbles if you really don't want them to get a creature out pretty soon. Play Bubbles first, then play Adult Swim. Bubbles, 5 power, still going to remain on the table. The last card in Unfathomable we had was the Toxicuda Venom. Just gives a creature poison. In Saurion we had Good of the Many. Got one of the damage enhancements. Destroy each creature that does not share a trait with another creature in its controller's battle line. Token creatures are fine with this card. If there's 2 token creatures out, they're not going to die. Again, affects both yours and your opponent's battle line, so just be careful when you play it. Hastatus Raptor, we had 2 of them. 5 power, 1 armor, big creatures. You may exalt it, you don't have to, but if you do exalt it, you deal 1 damage to the creature it fights for each amber on friendly Hastatus Raptors. There's only 2. If you had an amber on each and then you decided to exalt it again, you deal 3 damage before the fight takes place. If that destroys the creature, there's no fight. Having a lot of amber on one of these, or amber spread out over multiples, I think I've seen decks with 5 or 6 in before, can be quite destructive to your opponent's battle line, because if you have 5 raptors out, each with an amber on, every time they attack and you exalt, you're dealing minimum 7 damage. If you keep going through the battle line, you can get all the way up to probably 12. It's pretty impressive when they're in groups and you can put amber on them. Regrettable Meteor, a card that's returning that we probably don't really want to play in this deck unless we are really behind and have no dinosaurs on the board, because even our token creature is considered dinosaur. Regrettable Meteor. It got a draw enhancement. You destroy each dinosaur creature and each creature with power 6 or higher. And if we need to deal with creatures lower than that, we have Crushing Charge. Destroy each creature with power 4 or lower. Gain 1 chain. So the board clears are there, but they are very situational. You may not want to play them if you are ahead. There's lots of other control in this deck. You might not need to play them. Finally, in Brobnar, we had the good old Pound. 2 damage to a creature with 1 damage splash either side. Very good at dealing with wards and pesky elusive creatures. Strato Smack, loving the artwork on that. It got the damage enhancement, which is quite good, and then you deal 3 damage to a creature. So actually you could do a 4 power creature with Strato Smack with this damage enhancement. And then obviously the 2 Jar Svens that we saw, they're going to be attacking, so I've put them under creature control as well as their token generation there. There are a couple of cards that weren't included in what I thought would be the AERC or the token generation. We had 3 cards that just put enhancements in the deck. Now the 2 Kelp Miners, they're 5 power. That's quite beefy bodies, and that ended up putting in 2 capture and 4 draw. The Rowdy Scold put in an amber and 2 damage, and it hit a capture enhancement from one of those Kelp Miners. And then finally we had Signal Fire, which is an artifact, Omni ability, destroy it, and for the remainder of the turn, friendly Brobnar creatures may fight. If you've got Brick Nasty out, you can generate a hell of a lot of amber if you have a Brobnar board. We've seen Brobnar already in this set. I think they've come back with a complete revamp with absolute vengeance. They are so fun to play. This deck is very annoying to play against because the amber control is there. The Covetous Heamer, having 3 in the deck, helps keep your opponent's amber total down. If it does ramp up, you've got those Senators to maybe keep them off check, and we do have the token generation to have them on the board. And ultimately, you've got Rant and Rive. If they're ramping quick, you'll just half their amber total. This deck is a very, very good deck. It can't deal with artifacts. A lot of decks tend to have that problem, but the creature control is very, very good. It can lead to a slow game. This deck is not great at generating amber if you're having to constantly fight your opponent to keep them off check. If you get lucky and you have a creature with 3, 4, 5 amber on it, and then you play that Saurian card from earlier, Epic Poem, that could be a huge ramp in amber. I can foresee that card being hated by many. But that was the 3rd Winds of Exchange deck. I hope you enjoyed it. We have 3 more to go. 2 of them have the same houses, so Unfathomable, Brobnar and Star Alliance, and the other one is Mars, Sanctum and Star Alliance. I think I'll do the Mars one next because it's been so long since we've seen Mars. And then we'll finish off with the other 2. Each of them do have different token creatures, so there will be something new in the decks coming up as well. But all that remains for me to say is good luck, have fun, keep forging.